In Surrey, he once lived in a 450-year-old manor where the hit song Under Pressure was born beside a stream. In Hollywood Hills, he owned a Spanish-style villa once listed for over $6 million. Roger Taylor could easily live like a rock and roll aristocrat, but he chose to step back and let others take the spotlight. When the cross failed, he didn't make excuses. When his private life was scrutinized, he didn't defend himself. And when Freddie passed away, he didn't let go of the legacy. He kept drumming, kept holding the rhythm for Queen. At 75, Roger Taylor holds a fortune worth over $200 million. He's invested in real estate, vintage cars, and global charities, yet never once claimed to be the leader of anything. This is the story of a man who didn't need the spotlight, didn't need applause, yet made the whole world listen with nothing more than the beat of a drum. Who would have thought that a boy who once slept on the cold floor of a house in Cornwall would one day stand on the stage at Wembley, with tens of thousands chanting his name? And would you believe that the biggest obstacle on his path to becoming a legend wasn't poverty, but the silence of those closest to him? Roger Meadows Taylor was born on July 26, 1949, in King's Lynn, Norfolk, a quiet, small town far removed from the musical currents pulsing through major cities like London or Liverpool. His family was a textbook example of the British working class after the war. Not poor enough to beg, but never knowing what it meant to live comfortably. His father, Michael Taylor, worked for the Ministry of Transport, inspecting motor vehicles. A diligent, steady job, enough to get by, but not enough to nourish something called passion. His mother, Winifred, was a homemaker, modest and reserved. That family wasn't short on love, but always short on money. So much so that Roger often had to curl up and sleep on the floor, cold sea winds slipping through the loose window panes. No heating, no instruments, no drums, no piano, just one old radio, and a boy full of dreams. At the age of 7, Roger began doing something no one in his family understood. He played the ukulele. He joined a small kids band called the Bubbling Over Boys. They didn't have any memorable shows, no applause. Most people in town didn't even know this little boy was practicing music. To the grown-ups, it was just a childish whim. To Roger, it was life. Roger's childhood was a long escape from a predetermined destiny. When his family moved to Truro, a beautiful but isolated countryside town, he felt even further from opportunity. At Truro School, he was a bright student, especially in the sciences, which led his parents to dream a respectable dream for him: dentistry. But Roger only wanted to play drums. The problem was, drums were expensive. The family couldn't afford a proper kit, so Roger got creative. He used pots, pans, tin cans, even wooden crates to build his own homemade drum set. Sometimes he stretched rubber bands over wood to simulate string vibrations, made makeshift microphones from copper wire cores, and drummed alone in the woodshed. He practiced by tapping rhythms on his knees. No lessons, no teachers, no YouTube or music books, just the radio. And through that radio, Roger first heard Keith Moon of The Who, wild, untamed drumming that shattered every boundary. Then came Mitch Mitchell, the legendary drummer of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, thunderous, explosive beats. Those nights, Roger wouldn't sleep. He'd sit on the floor, ear pressed to the speaker, mentally writing every rhythm as if he were up there on stage with them. No records, no money, just dreams. He was lonely, deeply lonely. No one in Truro understood, Roger once said. To them, music was a luxury. For me, it was breath. I didn't know how to do anything else. I just knew how to drum, and I couldn't stop. At 15, Roger joined a semi-pro band called The Reaction, his first time behind a real drum kit. They played in small pubs, village fairs, places where no one cared who Roger Taylor was. But to him, it was the first time the dream had a heartbeat. He taught himself how to tune drums, arrange beats, and replicate Keith Moon's technique by memory. Things no book could ever teach. Yet, as the dream began to take shape, reality pulled him back. Under family pressure, Roger enrolled at London Hospital Medical College to study dentistry. His family was proud. Friends congratulated him. But Roger, on the very first day of class, knew he had just walked into a prison. I remember standing in the lab, looking at those cold test tubes, and thinking, this isn't where I belong. Just weeks later, Roger dropped out. He gave up everything. No degree, no money, no backup plan. His family was stunned. His mother cried. His father didn't speak to him for weeks. His family was stunned. His mother cried. His father didn't speak to him for weeks. And so Roger, barely 20, was alone in London, living in a room barely larger than a closet, sleeping on friends' sofas, wandering through tiny bars, looking for drumming gigs. Every time he got rejected, he just kept going. You're not the right fit. Music isn't a real job. You should go home. But Roger didn't go home. He clung to music like a man obsessed, with no way back. No one knew the name Roger Taylor. No one clapped when he played. No one gave him a thing. Until one day. A scrap of paper pinned to a student notice board at Imperial College London read, "Band seeks drummer. Good technique and passion preferred. Contact Brian May." Roger called, and from that call, a legend was born. From that tiny flyer, I met Brian, then Freddie, then Queen. But it all started with rejection, with people thinking I was chasing the impossible. And then, just like that, a nod, a tiny room in London, became the birthplace of one of the greatest rock bands of all time. A boy who once learned to play drums on tin cans, who once slept on friends' sofas because he couldn't afford rent. And just over a decade later, he was standing in the middle of Wembley Stadium, with more than 1 billion people around the world clapping along to his drumbeat. What happened in between? How did Roger Taylor, once an unknown drummer, become the soul of Queen, the man behind Radio Gaga, holding a fortune he once didn't dare to dream of? In 1968, in a small room at Imperial College London, destiny knocked on the door. A simple flyer looking for a drummer brought Roger Taylor together with a physics student named Brian May, a man with his signature curly hair, and another dreamer searching for his own sound. Together with Tim Staffel, they quickly formed the band Smile, though what they didn't know then was that Smile was merely a sketch for something far greater. Smile soon disbanded when Tim left, and just then, a new figure appeared, Farrokh Bulsara, better known as Freddie Mercury, a man with a voice like fire and a stage presence like thunder. Freddie saw what no one else had seen in Roger, not just a drummer, but a true artist with a leader's spirit. Freddie named the band Queen, and that's when everything began. But beginnings are never easy. When Queen released their first tracks, critics laughed them off. Who do they think they are? A rock opera? Indeed, the name Queen, the flamboyant costumes, the wailing guitars, the theatrical vocals, everything about them pushed far beyond what British music was used to. No one believed they could make it. Even Bohemian Rhapsody, now a global anthem, was initially flat-out rejected. A 6-minute song, no chorus, blending ballad, opera, hard rock. Radio stations called it a musical oddity. But Roger and Queen didn't give up. They stayed true to the path they chose. And when Bohemian Rhapsody exploded across the charts, breaking every mold, Queen didn't just prove their talent, they shattered all preconceptions. With their 1975 album, A Night at the Opera, Queen went from being dismissed to becoming a global phenomenon. And Roger Taylor, the same drummer once rejected by other bands for not having the right look, was suddenly in the spotlight. A unique drummer who played while singing harmonies and one of the band's most gifted songwriters. He wrote iconic tracks like I'm in Love with My Car, These Are the Days of Our Lives, and most notably, Radio Gaga, a song both nostalgic and deeply social, mourning the decline of radio in the age of video. Radio Gaga was a voice for an entire generation, Roger once said. I didn't write it to be a hit. I wrote it because I saw radio dying, and with it, a part of our soul. Live Aid. 21 minutes that changed the world. If one moment could define the peak of Queen and of Roger Taylor, it would be Live Aid. On July 13, 1985, inside Wembley Stadium, Roger stood behind his drum kit in front of 72,000 live spectators and over 1 billion watching worldwide. It was Live Aid, the historic fundraising concert against famine in Africa, featuring the biggest names in the world: Led Zeppelin, Elton John, David Bowie. Then Queen took the stage. In just 21 minutes, they conquered the planet. From Bohemian Rhapsody to We Will Rock You, from Freddie's soaring vocals to Roger's sharp, commanding beats, the stadium erupted. People didn't just hear music, they lived it. From a boy no one listened to, Roger had become the man who made the entire world move to his rhythm. From rejection to millions. From the days of being turned away and crashing on friends' sofas, Roger Taylor is now among the wealthiest and most powerful artists in Britain. Queen has sold over 300 million records, smashing every box office record during their tours. Just Radio Gaga alone has brought Roger tens of millions in royalties over the last 4 decades. By 2020, his estimated net worth surpassed $200 million, more than many of his most famous solo contemporaries. Compared to Phil Collins, the legendary Genesis drummer with a dazzling solo career and multiple Billboard #1 hits, Roger took a different path: quiet, steady, and letting the drums speak for him. If Collins was the man of the spotlight, Roger was the one building the foundation, keeping Queen strong for over half a century. Roger's fortune isn't just measured in numbers. It's in historic mansions, private studios, timeless recordings passed down through generations. And most remarkably, everything began with a boy no one believed in. A boy who once drummed with wooden spoons, who had to choose between his dream and his family's expectations. And now, while others retire, Roger still stands behind the drum kit, silver hair glowing in the spotlight, beating each rhythm as if time had never passed. The boy has become the heartbeat of a generation. From those first drum beats, Roger built an empire, not just in music, but in the extraordinary life he now lives. But that's a story we'll explore next. Some people grow rich to afford luxury, but others, like Roger Taylor, turn the very places they live, the cars they drive, and the passions they pursue into a personal manifesto. Not to flaunt, but to tell the story of a journey, from a dim attic to the throne of rock. Surrey Mansion, where drums echo through ancient woods. Nestled among ancient trees in Surrey, England, Roger Taylor's mansion wasn't just a house. It was a part of his soul. Purchased in 1979, when Queen had just soared to global stardom, the estate spanned nearly 18,000 square feet, featuring 7 bedrooms, a swimming pool, a tennis court, and a private recording studio housed within a 450-year-old building. It was here that the first ideas for Under Pressure were born, in collaboration with Freddie Mercury, an immortal moment in music history. The home was valued at $7.775 million before Roger sold it in 2003. But for fans, it remains a living relic of Queen's golden age, a space where the past never left, just waits quietly to be heard again. Hollywood Hills, a symphony of Western light. In 1981, amid non-stop world tours and growing fame, Roger bought a classic Spanish-style villa in Hollywood Hills, Los Angeles, for a modest $352,000. But it wasn't merely a pit stop. With over 4,300 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, hardwood floors, marble fireplaces, and a lagoon-style pool, it was an oasis nestled within the city of cinema. In 2024, Roger listed the property for $6.19 million. Like an old Hollywood film, the house retains the spirit of the 1980s, when Queen lit up America and Roger was no longer an unknown drummer. Cornwall, the return to boyhood. Cornwall, land of sea winds, memories, and hard times. Perhaps that's why, after achieving everything, Roger chose to own a holiday estate on Helford River, deeply tied to his childhood. The property features 3 annex buildings, a tennis court, and a private helipad, estimated at £2 million. From above, it resembles a manor straight out of a fairy tale. Slate rooftops, riverside trees, and an atmosphere of utter stillness. I used to dream of hearing drums in the wild. Now I play, and only the sea breeze answers, Roger once said. But Roger Taylor doesn't just live in beautiful spaces. He moves through life with a collection of hand-picked machines, each like a distinct musical note, a life chapter, and a personal definition of freedom. Not all cars are just for driving. To Roger Taylor, each one holds a memory, a moment, from childhood bike rides in Cornwall to gliding beneath LA streetlights. Ferrari 308 GTB, 1977. The roar of self-assertion. His first Ferrari, the 1977 308 GTB, boasted a signature wedge design and naturally aspirated V8 engine, symbols of 70s freedom and power. Unlike others who chose flashy red, Roger opted for metallic graphite, quiet, cool, and introspective. A Ferrari in his own image. When Queen exploded in the US, Roger didn't buy castles, he bought speed. With the 308, he drove as someone who had just shattered every limit. Aston Martin 8 Volante, 1979. The aristocratic English spirit. If Ferrari represented wild passion, the Aston Martin 5.8 Volante showed another side of Roger, calm, elegant, and quintessentially British. Once driven by James Bond, the V8 Volante doesn't boast. It simply is class. With handcrafted Connolly leather interiors, a body kissed by the British sunset, and a 5.3-liter V8 engine that hums like a jazz snare, the car is a ballad in a rock world. In the Aston Martin, Roger wasn't just a rock star, he was a gentleman true to himself. Porsche Panamera Turbo, 2012. A modern symphony. Roger doesn't live in the past alone. He embraced modern tech with the Porsche Panamera Turbo. Strong, sleek, capable of 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.6 seconds, yet spacious enough to carry peace and nostalgia. This is the car for rainy days, when he cruises Surrey's damp roads, the radio playing "These Are the Days of Our Lives," and he smiles, knowing he lived each moment fully. Mercedes-Benz 450 SL, 1978. 70s style on a convertible roof. Wavy hair, 2 shirt buttons undone, and the top-down Mercedes-Benz 450 SL. Roger's late 70s California look was proof that even rock stars know how to coast with grace. This cruiser isn't about speed. It's about drifting through the world with a smirk. In the 450 SL, Roger feels like a European actor passing through Hollywood. Weathered, romantic, and intriguingly private. Ferrari 360 Modena, a new millennium's roar. With its rounded aerodynamics and 3.6-liter V8 engine, the Ferrari 360 Modena represents Roger's constant reinvention. Launched in the early 2000s, it marked Queen's revival with Adam Lambert. If older Ferraris were the glorious past, the 360 Modena is the vivid present. Fiery, precise, and perfectly timed. Rolls-Royce Phantom, the art of silence. Not every car needs to roar. Roger's Rolls-Royce Phantom is a minimalist statement. Silent, deep, and made for those with nothing left to prove. Dark brown leather interiors, a starlit ceiling, and suicide doors. The Phantom is like a chamber orchestra in a world of EDM. Roger doesn't perform. He opens the door, and the world falls silent. Porsche 911, a timeless icon. No true British artist's garage is complete without a Porsche 911. This car has survived every musical era, from punk to grunge to modern pop. And Roger, like his 911, has remained through it all. A car that needs no introduction. Just like Roger Taylor, never off stage, always the solid rhythm behind legends. But perhaps the most intriguing thing about Roger Taylor isn't in his Ferraris or Rolls-Royces. It's in how he lives when the engines stop and the mansion doors close, in the subtle joys that reveal more than fame ever could. If homes and cars are where Roger lives, then his personal hobbies are where he breathes. In 2023, Roger and Adam Lambert, Freddie's on-stage heir, opened The Wild, a bar in West Hollywood. Not a flashy chain like other rock stars, The Wild radiates nostalgia. Every corner holds a piece of Queen's legacy. Old tour photos, original posters, handwritten lyrics. Roger didn't just invest money, he infused the bar with soul, as someone preserving memory for himself and the next generation. He's also a collector of handcrafted Scottish whiskey, made by small family-run distilleries. No mass production, no marketing, just passed down from one artisan to the next. These bottles are like acoustic tracks, raw, subtle, and deeply affecting. His standout piece? The Macallan Sherry Oak, 25 years old, a rare single malt aged over a quarter century in Spanish oak. Each bottle numbered, with a rich amber hue and notes of dried fruit, toasted wood, and soft cinnamon. Valued at over $10,000, it's more than an investment for Roger. Whiskey, like music, must have depth. It can't be rushed, he once said. It's about curation, a love for what can't be seen, only felt over time. Roger Taylor didn't build his world with screams, but with steady, unwavering rhythm. Every home, every car, every bottle of whiskey is the result of intentional choices, from a man who walked through poverty without ever losing himself. And that is the greatest luxury of all, to live true to yourself at every stage of life. In Hollywood, they say, if you live long enough in the spotlight, sooner or later, the darkness will swallow you. But with Roger Taylor, the story isn't about scandal, It's about how he walked through it, quietly, calmly, and with his head held high. People often expect rock stars to be loud, scandalous, drenched in booze, drugs, and tangled love affairs. But Roger Taylor was different. He faced rumors, skeptical glances, and uncomfortable questions, yet rarely stood at the center of any explosive tabloid frenzy. And somehow, it was precisely in those moments of public scrutiny, when he met them with composure and silence, that his image stood out from the rest of his rock and roll peers. In 1988, Roger married Dominique Berrand, the woman who had stood by him since his struggling days. They had 2 children together, but in 1991, Roger welcomed another child, Rufus Taylor, with a woman who, at the time, was not yet his official partner, Serena Potgieter. Some tabloids questioned whether the relationship had started before his first marriage had ended. Roger didn't respond. He didn't deny it either. He simply continued living, raising his children, and, when the time was right, married Serena in 2010. In an age where everything is dragged into the light and dissected in excruciating detail, Roger remained silent. Not because he didn't care, but perhaps because he understood. The truth doesn't need to be shouted to survive. Those who understand will understand. And those who don't want to, no words can change their minds. His solo career also experienced a stumble. After Queen had already become a global monument, Roger formed a new band, The Cross, where he wrote songs, sang lead vocals, and played drums. The project lasted 6 years, but never truly took off. Critics were blunt. The Cross is a faint shadow of Queen. Some fans were disappointed, unable to find the former glory they were looking for. But Roger never made excuses. There were no long interviews explaining himself, no complaints about the music industry. When The Cross disbanded in 1993, he simply said, "I tried, and I don't regret it." For someone who once made Wembley Stadium tremble, accepting failure without collapsing is no small feat. While other artists, like Freddie Mercury, lived life to the fullest, leaving behind tales of wild parties, lovers, and reckless abandon, Roger chose a different path. Not because he didn't dare to live that way, but because he knew what truly mattered: music, family, balance, and the moments where he could be himself without playing a role. Like his bandmate John Deacon, who retreated from the spotlight after Freddie's death, Roger could have vanished too. With a net worth of over $200 million, he could have chosen a quiet life among the vineyards of Cornwall, or behind the gates of a grand estate with Rolls-Royces parked outside. But he didn't. Roger chose to keep performing, not to replace Freddie, not to cash in, but because he understood some things, like Bohemian Rhapsody or Radio Gaga, if no one keeps the flame alive, they will fade. And he couldn't let that happen. It's easy to respond to public judgment with tweets, tell-all interviews, or lawsuits. But Roger didn't take that path. He stepped back, but never disappeared. He faced the noise, but never lost control. He let his music, his time, and his way of living speak for him. And that's why he's respected, not because he avoided scandal, but because he walked through it like someone who truly understood the value of silence and resolve. But beyond the scandals and the spotlight, Roger Taylor left behind something else. Not in money, but in heart. And we'll explore that next. Some people use money to buy fame. Roger Taylor used fame to give value. Though he never stood at the center of a fundraising gala or delivered lengthy speeches at international summits, for years he quietly stood behind meaningful campaigns, like an undercover rock star of the community. In 1992, After Freddie Mercury's death due to AIDS-related complications, Roger was the first to step up and organize the Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley. That concert wasn't just a farewell to Freddie. It became one of the biggest charitable music events of its time, raising over £20 million, the majority of which went to the Mercury Phoenix Trust, a charity co-founded by Roger himself. Not everyone knows this, but thanks to Roger's steady contributions and the Trust's work, schools have been built in Uganda, clean water has reached impoverished villages in Bolivia, and thousands have gained access to medicine, education, and hope, even if they've never heard his name. These incredible things happen quietly, in places where stage lights never shine. In 2014, when the Ebola outbreak struck West Africa, Roger joined Band Aid 30 alongside the UK's top artists to record "Do They Know It's Christmas" for emergency aid. Within weeks, the campaign raised over £2 million. And there was Roger, not at the front, not in the spotlight, just exactly where he chose to be. Close enough to make a difference, far enough to not need applause. At a small charity event in London, organizers invited Roger on stage to speak about his role in the community. He simply smiled and said, "I'm not good at speaking. I'd rather just play the drums for you." And that's exactly what he did. No microphone, no spotlight, just the rhythm of drums echoing through the room. And everyone, from executives to students, sat in silent awe. Beyond his charitable work, Roger has also contributed to education. At Truro School, his alma mater, he donates over £100,000 a year to support music and arts programs for underprivileged students. He doesn't name the scholarships after himself. He didn't ask to name the hall. He simply left a small note through his manager. "Help the kids who used to be like me." Many assume rock stars live fully under the spotlight and retreat quietly afterward. But Roger is different. When he's not drumming, he still uses music to heal, to connect, and to give, in his own quiet way. If you ever played Radio Gaga on an old radio back in the 80s, just know that somewhere out there, Roger Taylor is still using those same drum beats to make the world a little better. His legacy isn't measured in albums sold or how many times he topped the Billboard charts. His legacy lives in unspoken kindness, in his ability to make people believe in goodness, even if they once doubted it. From a poor boy in Cornwall to the quiet hero of millions, Roger Taylor has proven, music isn't just melody.